In 2019, the collections here at Colonial Williamsburg acquired a full-size portrait of King William III. The painting came to us with a modern 20th century frame. So we undertook to do a deep dive into the research and making of a proper Baroque frame for this painting. Baroque decorative arts were very exuberant. There was a lot of very fanciful carving. Picture frames could be fully carved, what we call bolection moldings, which are big, puffy, rounded shapes. Here in Williamsburg, we have discovered objects like the Blandfield frame, which was very much in that same style. It gives us the opportunity to compare how it was made to how the treatises said an object like that might have been made in the time. We took samples, we analyzed the cross-sections, and that's sort of like doing archaeology on a small scale. We did further analysis from those cross-sections with scanning electron microscopy to identify the elemental makeup of those layers so that we can prove that there was actually silver leaf on that frame. With infrared spectroscopy, we were able to identify the resin type of the varnish top coating. We went about making the frame largely in the traditional manner. We have laminated pine wood, in this case white pine. We molded it, we pre-cut it on a table saw and by hand in a combination of ways to create the background molded form. From that, we cut the corners to a mitered joint, took the design of the Blandfield frame and traced it out with carbon paper. And from there, took to hand carving it.
To carve this frame, we used carving gouges and specialty carving tools like spoon bent gouges, skew chisels, and flat chisels. We used a router to carve depth gauges into the wood along the backgrounds of our design. Then the next step is to carve outlines. It's a process of carving back and forth between the shapes and the background, going deeper and deeper until we reach the right depth.
Following the carving of the moldings, the first step is laying down a glue size to seal the wood, and then multiple coats of the gesso would be laid over that.
The gesso goes down first in increasing layers of fineness. Gesso is made of calcium carbonate chalk and dilute hide glue, and then the bowl goes on top. Bowl is clay as well as a more dilute hide glue. In this case, we're using a white bowl, which is made from kaolin clay, which you might also find in porcelain. The white bowl is also tied to silvering specifically because the white color really helps the silver show up nicely.
After the gesso and bowl preparation layers are applied, a very characteristic zigzag pattern is stamped into the background to distinguish it from the burnished highlights. It's become known as hazeling, but that is not a period term. Following the final coats of gesso and white clay bowl, then the silvering would occur. The process of silvering follows a traditional technique of what we call water gilding, or it's similar to water gilding. Gilding is laying on of gold leaf, silvering is silver leaf, but the aspect of laying it on, the technique of laying it on is the same. A water size, essentially, with a little alcohol is brushed onto the surface. The leaf is picked up with a gilder's tip. It's laid on to the wetted surface, reactivating the glue, and the leaf sticks to the glue. We're completing the silver leaf application in the public gallery in order to demonstrate a part of the making of the frame. And this gives us an access to our public membership about what conservation is, what we do behind the scenes normally. So that is an interesting aspect to the overall project. Before it's fully hardened, then the next step would be to burnish the silver with an agate stone tool. And this is the step where you would bring up the shine on those highlights. After the final burnishing, which is the last step in the silvering process, then a top varnish would be applied to inhibit tarnishing, silver being a very reactive metal. Once all of the silvering and the varnished surfaces have been completed, we will then join the frame in preparation for fitting the painting in order to move the frame from the conservation labs over to the museum to be installed in the British Masterworks exhibit.
This was a really fun project as a conservator to get out of the lab and get my hands dirty doing something a little different.
This has been a very satisfying project in order to provide the correct protection and housing, but also the interpretive aspect of a large full-size portrait from a period that is a fairly rare time in our collecting here at Colonial Williamsburg.